I'm trying to do as many of the practice with I bought the extra practice
Dearborn.
test and doing them in the book
Mm-hmm.
is like there's so many that are almost right.
Yeah.
And then there's just one that is more right.
Yep.
And I always tend to like overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes the questions don't give me enough
Right.
information that I'm truly guessing.
Right.
And then, a lot of this stuff I know, because I probably have put in 500 plus hours of just listening
Smart.
to YouTube videos
Mm-hmm.
and all different people whenever I'm not in class, just
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep it in my
Yep.
brain constantly when I'm out in the yard or when I'm getting ready in the morning for work or when I'm driving to work. But I feel like some of these questions just don't give you enough
Yeah.
information.
That's the sign of a smart person. We can't help it.
Yeah. I'm trying
We're
to like
looking for the
break these
angles.
sentences
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. But
And I'm going to need a whole notebook of paper because I have to write everything out and put Sally, Jenny over here, the real estate
right.
group, here, commissions
Yeah.
everywhere. I have them so visual,
Yeah.
but I'm just digging into these questions and I'm like, it's not the questions are throwing me off, the
Yeah.
answers.
Well, you nailed it. It's overthinking it. You have to really, now that you know the content, gear back and go away. You're being annoying. Um, I love you, but you're being annoying. And you have to think, okay, just work with what is on this one little question using this info only, not all of the things in your brain that start with the words, yeah, but. yeah, yeah, but
Right.
what about this?
Hmm.
You have to ignore those thoughts and just work with the exact what they give you. And it's a challenge for sure. I get it.
Yeah.
The
So,
score,
and then I'll go back and read them and I'm like, okay, I should have chose that one.
right.
But, it really didn't give me enough information to make me want to choose that one.
Do you
And
have you have an example of that?
no, not right off a hand. I was
Um,
doing last night I was doing, I want to say it was it unit 10? Like this book is so thick.
yeah.
And I mean, I feel pretty good on doing like the offers and contracts. And that's why I was going through let's see, let me grab my notebook because I have the ones that I got wrong on it. I have notebooks everywhere where I have these little.
Well, you know what you got to do after all this is publish those and sell them as tutorials.
Right. I mean, which one did I do last night? I think it was this one. Yeah, that was that one. So on Unit 10, number 8 question, it was an offer to purchase real estate can be terminated by all of the following reasons except, and the answer was B, which was revocation by the offeror communicated to the offeree after acceptance. And I chose acceptance of the offer by the offeree after making one change in terms. And I think I've got to write down offeree is the receivee, offeror is
Mm-hmm.
the grantor. So I think I got to that needs to be my first thing because it was just too many words.
Right. Yeah.
It just threw me off. I just had it backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
And
sure. That is, and maybe I've always, I guess by default, done it that way: buyer on the left, seller on the right. Maybe have that, and then that's one little imprint in your brain, and then be like, okay. But the problem with offeror and offeree is this word changes because the minute this seller counters, they're the offeror. But at least you're starting somewhere and thinking, okay, wait, this initial offer got rejected and countered, therefore now that's the offeror. We'll just get rid of multiple letters for fun, and just if it's the visual and crossing things out, do it, right? For
right.
sure.
And I think on these questions like that, they always throw death in there.
Oh yeah,
There always somebody dies.
yeah,
So this one was death of the offeror or offeree. So that would terminate because there is no contract if one of them passes away.
There is still a contract. And that's the other big issue is, are we talking about an offer or a contract? And so when it's a contract, if the seller dies, do you still have a contract?
You do still have a contract with the firm, your listing agreement.
Well, no. Let's don't mix things up. Contract for sale versus listing agreement. So
Okay.
let's stick with a
The
contract.
seller is the buyer, correct?
Say again.
Seller is the buyer. Is that how it is? Oh, it's a little confusing how the verbiage is for me.
So if we're talking about an offer to purchase compared to a contract that has been signed by all the parties and accepted and communicated, therefore we are under contract.
Right.
What happens when the seller dies? If it's a contract, get rid of that offer. Or a contract period, the seller dies, the estate is still obligated to fulfill it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Would it be the heirs that would have to fulfill?
Heirs and estate. Now, still in the contract situation, if not the seller dies, but the listing agent dies, then that's what I think you were getting toward. It's the property of the firm anyway. So the firm will say, well, we're so sorry they died. We're just going to reassign it to another listing agent. It's still there if the listing agent dies when we're talking about even a listing agreement for that matter.
Okay.
Right. And what if the buyer dies in a contract situation? Now it is dead. Contract does die because the heirs and estate aren't beholden to carry out the wishes of this buyer to purchase a thing.
Right.
So that makes sense that the buyer dies with the contract, then contract dies. Seller dies, no. The heirs and estate will have to honor it.
So the only real way for a contract to die is for the buyer to die.
Well, in terms of people dying, buyer dies, it does. Seller dies, no. But if the property dies, a better way to say that, if it's destroyed while in a contract situation, then what? Who is it up to as to how to proceed, buyer or seller?
So the buyer can still buy it if it's destructed by tornado or anything, because if they're under contract, they could still go for the insurance.
Exactly. Buyer decides if they still want to buy it. If they don't, they can get out of it. But if they do, then they get that insurance money and move forward.
Correct.
Yep.
Now, my question on that is so of course, when you're buying a property or under contract, you typically don't have insurance on that property as of yet. So it would be the person selling the home's insurance.
Right.
So how is there not any loopholes or anything to hold you back from that?
No.
That you would be eligible to get that money?
No, the seller's insurance policy is such that if the property goes away or is destroyed, they pay out, right? And so that payout would then, I don't know the logistics, mechanics of it, but it goes to the buyer if the buyer wants to keep going with the transaction and purchase it. I mean, what does the insurance company care? They're paying out either way. So if it's paying out because their client, the seller, wants to be done with the property and move on with life, then I don't know what happens next after that. Now we're getting into thinking too much. What happens? Is that insurance company going to want to have the policy from the buyer? Blah blah blah. More than we need, right? Too much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just who.
Yeah. And in real life,
able to do it.
A lot of these things that we're tempted with that phrase, but what if? In real life, we usually don't touch any of those circumstances. We're going to push it to someone else and say, we need to talk to somebody, because all we're here for is to help you with this sale and not give you advice, because that's now getting into insurance advice or legal advice or both. And so we'd be reaching out
like an attorney needs to do all of that. Okay. Another one I had on here was it was mostly a for sale by owner question, which I think that was I just chose the wrong one. One was where someone received offers after they were already under contract. And I missed it because it says that the listing agent went to someone else and asked hey, we got this offer. We're almost under contract. Do you want to come in and go higher? Then,
Wow.
and I think what I answered was, they were working within the commission rules to be able to do that, as long as the seller was okay with it or instructed them to do it. Where the answer was they were in violation of commission rules. So I guess it was kind of like they were shopping for higher
Right.
offers.
If sounds like they were setting it up basically so that the person was telling what that highest offer was, therefore you need to do this to win, and we cannot
Right.
disclose. Whose permission would we need in order to disclose highest offer?
The person that they offer was accepted.
Exactly. The
So,
person whose offer you're thinking about disclosing. Right. We usually
right.
say the one of the highest offer, but whatever offer you're going to be disclosing, you would need the permission of the one who made that offer, and you'd be
And who would do that? Who would say yes?
exactly right. But so many times in even update course with these are agents that if some of them 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the business, they still answer that wrong. And I say, whose permission? And they say the seller's, because they're used to it, because the answer to how many, if you can disclose that there are multiple offers, whose permission would you need to disclose that? And that is the seller's. So they just think it's
Correct.
both. So that's a easily testable question for mixing those potential things up.
After I think about it, then I know the answer. And sometimes I just think that by the time I get through some of these, my brain's already fried.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going through like 140 questions.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like-
Well, that's true too. You probably are doing this after several hours that would be much more than you will be dealing with on this test. For that,
Yeah.
for your repeated struggle with that, which I have the same, I would lean hard on the skipping questions strategy and let your mind rest. Give it a look, leave it unanswered, move around, because also another question and answer selection of selection of choices might trigger something in your memory, and then you can come back around full circle. And
Yes, definitely. And my main thing is math.
yeah,
Like some of these math questions just are a doozy.
the calculation ones or anything math. Okay.
I want to say it's like the interest ones.
Okay.
Like whenever I'm in the process and I'm doing it, I feel comfortable with it. And then all of a sudden it's gone.
I know.
Math was not my thing in school either,
Me
but
either.
I'm trying my best to bring it back. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But I think it's mostly like they're wanting to know the interest, the first interest payment of the loan. And then are they going to provide on that test like that loan chart?
If they don't, they'll give you the loan factor. So they'll either give you that one factor you need or the chart, and you have to go find it. One or the other.
Okay.
As to the calculations, the good news is there's only 7. So you could bomb all of them, and if you do well enough on everything else, that's been the strategy for some people that are so completely math phobic. They're like, I don't even want to spend any time preparing. I'll just risk it and gamble that I get enough other ones right. But I think we can get you over the hump on some of these. Do you want to try the square mile one first, or an interest one first?
The square mile one, and I can't remember where I found the question at, but it was asking for, I want to say it was the price per acre or something like that, but it was a 2x2 square mile block. And I'm like, well, gosh, I know how many square feet are in a acre, but I don't know nothing about a mile.
Well,
So
here's
I was
the
lost.
thing. It might be a little short circuit going on because you're thinking, wait a minute. How many feet is a mile, by the way?
It's a lot.
5,280 feet. And so the thing that's probably confusing is that, wait a minute, a mile is linear. A mile is not square footage. And so if this just means that on each side of this square, 2-acre square is 5,280, now just forget about the 2 miles and change it to 2 times 5,280. Right?
Okay.
Which would be what? 10 something. What is that? Oh, it's right here. 5,280 times 2. Now we've got something that you recognize. 10,560 per side.
And so I had no clue how many feet were in a mile.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And so that makes a lot more sense. And then I just multiply those together and then divide it by 43,560.
Exactly. And this is a
And then that should give
ridiculously
me
huge number, which is a great number to just leave into the calculator.
Yeah.
So it's that, and then divided by the 43,560, and then that gives us 2,560 square miles.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep. Sure does.
That's a lot.
And what was throwing me off was not knowing the
Yep.
feet in a mile. So I'll imprint that in my brain. And then mostly just it's the math on the loan side of it.
Okay. Well, that all starts with the interest rate and the loan amount.
Okay.
And you know how to get the loan amount if they give you the price and the loan to value ratio. So that's not a mystery,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So let's say we have a rate of 7% and a loan amount of $300,000. If we were to multiply those two things together, what would that give us in terms of the name of the thing?
Okay, so $300,000 times 7% be $21,000 added.
But what is that?
So that's going to be, or $21,000. That's your interest.
Yeah. What kind of interest?
That's your first year interest, correct?
Yeah, annual interest. Yep. But here's the thing. It's not going to be a $300,000 loan balance the whole year, every month. It's going to keep going down, right, over time. And so this is just the calculation we'll use in order to accomplish the goal of answering what's the loan balance after the first payment. We need to know the very first loan balance in order to know this number, so that we can use this number to find out the monthly interest, right?
Which is $1,750.
Okay, so this divided by 12, $1,750. Get rid of some of these. $1,750 per month. Now we know that. The other thing we're going to need in this problem is what's the P&I? What's the principal and interest? And let me see. Oh, I know. Weirdly, some fellow instructor yesterday it's a lender made some joke about it was a humble brag. You know how people do that. And he said, yeah, kids were bench pressing at the gym, and I went over there and I said, let me try a couple, and they didn't believe me, and I did it, and blah, blah, blah. He's a little tiny guy, so of course he's got to brag like that. And I said, yeah, but he's a lender. I said, yeah, but could you tell them what the loan balance would be after the first month on a 7% interest rate with a $600,000 loan at 6.65 loan factor? And he laughed. He didn't answer it, though. He didn't even try. So I happen to know the loan factor for 7% because of that. So let me see if I can pull that up real quick.
Okay.
There
So
it
in
is.
that case, they should
6.65.
give us that information.
Yeah. It's 6.65 is the loan factor. So we know our loan amount. We know the rate, which we only need to know that if we had the loan factor chart so that we could find the rate, because I'll just say that it's at 30 years. We'll go with that. And so if the factor is 6.65, what is our next step? This was step one. Next step is to figure out that total monthly principal and interest, which doesn't change. So we're going to take our loan amount.
The loan amount, $300,000.
Divide by 1,000.
Yep.
Right? We got to get that into chunks of 1,000.
That's the part I think I forget is the divide by 1,000.
Well, see, here's the other thing that you could, if you just stick that on the bottom and the loan factor on the other side, and you totally forget it to do that little step, 300,000 times 6.65 is a ridiculous number, and that'll be a reminder. Can you see that calculator?
Yeah.
That'll remind you, wait, that's stupid. Oh, maybe I forgot that step. Divide by 1,000, and it accomplishes the same goal. You know, we're still where we needed to be. So 1995 is our P and I.
Okay.
And then we incorporate step 2 with step 1 and take that 1995 and subtract it by the 1750.
So that is your
Interest.
I'm gonna take a picture of this
Yeah,
so I can
yeah,
go
sure.
back
Well,
and study it. Okay.
PI minus I
Okay.
leaves us with just the principal.
Okay.
And so that's
And
200.
that's just heartbreaking.
Oh, I know. Yeah. 245 until you think, well, I'll just become the bank someday. So then I'll benefit from all this. $245 of principal is how much, yeah, that loan balance is coming down. So then step 4, subtract that from the 300.
Okay. So that is the balance after your first payment is made.
Exactly. And that's the answer to that question. And from the syllabus I was looking at the other day, I think they promised that that's all they're going to do. They won't. The syllabus seems to be saying they're not going to ask you if after the second month.
Okay.
Just after the
But
first.
basically, if they did, then you're just going to take your new loan balance of $200,099. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then you're just going to do the same problem.
Exactly. You will
Okay.
repeat step 1, but you won't have to repeat step 2 because this is unchanged. It's payment's
Right.
still the payment. And so then you just basically repeat. But if I did this better, we'd have done this step first. Then we could say, then just go to step 2 and go from there to the end. All over again,
Okay.
replacing loan balance with the new one here. Yep.
Okay.
Everything else the
Easy
same.
enough. Like when it's broke down like that, it's so
Yes.
easy. But sometimes when you put that into
know.
the question, it's just like, ooh,
Yep.
where do I
get it.
start?
Yep.
And then what was the other one that I feel like I have issues with? Let me look at my other notebook. I have notebooks everywhere.
You're good. I think that's a good sign. It's when you do that I can tell you have a really strong chance of first try success.
I actually took this class many years ago, probably 25 years ago, and I was way too young. It was way too big for me, but it was good knowledge, and the class was way shorter
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
not as informative at all.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is just I'm picking back up what I remember,
That's good.
which a lot of it has changed as well. But I don't remember as much math
Take a look at this.
back then.
Here's the syllabus under the calculations, which is the very last segment of the syllabus. And here it is. How to compute principal balance after one monthly payment given previous balance. So it's right there that's the test shouldn't make you do it too, because the syllabus is saying
So
one.
if it's not in the syllabus, it should not be on the test.
Correct.
So really study your syllabus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Noted. And I have been reading multiple times this the sheets that you sent us for the license law and rule comments
Yeah. Good.
over and over again as well. Trying to get it all in my brain.
Right. For sure.
So I think I understand the discount points. I think class number. Can we go over taxes?
Sure.
I think that was class number 17 that we did that in. The tax value, the interest. It was when we broke down that big problem with all the math, and we broke out into small groups and went through that.
So
I think I got it pretty good.
the tax part
But that's a lot
only,
of math.
or the big monster problem, or both?
The big monster problem.
Okay.
Where you really got to go through and do each
Yeah.
math equation.
Let's see. Was that this one?
And I think we broke some of it down into what the each person owns: the buyer, the seller, debit and credit on each side.
Was it this one?
I think so. The tax value was 467,500. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I put some things in the chat. The some things.
Oh, I see it.
Some practice problems for the cost approach and valuation, and then the red flags. That's. I mentioned it once before, and it's just some words to think about anytime you see them on the test. Just stop, pause your brain, and think. Wait a minute. Okay. Are we talking about the client or are we talking about the customer? Are we talking about an offer or are we talking about a contract? Then co-brokerage versus in-house. Is it two different companies or within the same one? And then the words executed versus executory, mortgagor, mortgagee, acceptance and communication, both are required. And the mailbox rule is good for conveying acceptance of an offer, but never delivering the money. You can't drop the due diligence in the mail and say, I delivered it. No, it's not delivered until they get it when it's money. Earnest money typically due 3 days from receipt. Due diligence is due on effective date. That loan estimate is due 3 days after loan application, which is the point at which you have given the lender the address of the property. They like to ask that. And then the CD, fast forward to closing, is due 3 days before closing, unless, well, always, but if the rate or something significant like that affects the payment changes the day before closing, now a new 3 days has to be granted with that new CD.
Right.
And it's just got some other little helpful reminders to think about. So let's see. This monster problem, was there the tax part specifically, or do you want to go through the whole thing? I don't mind.
You don't mind. We go through the whole thing.
Sure, it's fine.
Because me and my partner, we got through a good chunk of it, but I think there was a few things that we missed out on.
Okay. I know what we'll do. Here we go. Let me get it so that I can write on it again. Somehow I'm not. Let's use this one. All right. So when I see these things, I just sort of go down the list in order of them. Well, first of all, I look through the whole thing. I want to note things like this: have the taxes been paid or not? And they're not. And then it makes me think, well, when's the closing? Okay, November 17th. So it does matter about whether the taxes have been paid, because after September is the key there. And so with that, we can just pause and think, okay, if we're closing after September and they have not been paid, what are we going to do with it? We know that already. We just know that not yet paid means what?
That you're going to have to divide it up.
Yep.
The seller takes the year plus the date of closing, and then the buyer takes the remainder through the end of the year on a 360-day calendar.
Yep. And so we're going to debit the seller's portion, and debit the buyer, the buyer's portion. So I'll just make a little note about that. And then we get down to earnest money and due diligence money, and make a little note there. What are we going to do with those things when we go back through? Debit.
The due diligence is gone, but we're going to have to credit the buyer for that.
On the closing statement, how are we going to reflect earnest money? Let's start there. The $6,000 earnest money is going to show up as a debit or a credit to which side?
It is going to show up as a credit to the buyer.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly right. And that was earnest. So due diligence money is going to show up as how?
It should show up as a credit to the buyer as well.
Exactly. But
because that was,
it's also going to need to show up on the seller side too.
yes, as a debit.
Yep. Because of accounting. Because if we don't do this and we let the seller get that full purchase price without deducting the 35, then they will have gotten it twice because they got it back when the offer was official.
Right.
So earnest, not the same, only a credit to the buyer. In real life, they might handle it some other way, but for test purposes, just a buyer side thing only.
Okay.
And then we keep on going. We'll need the loan for some things that are calculations, but origination fee and discount points, what are they going to be? How are they going to be counted?
That is going to be on the loan amount.
Yep. And a debit to who?
It's going to be a debit to the buyer.
Exactly. Because the buyer's getting the loan and the lender's charging these things, therefore the buyer has to pay these things. And then taxes, we already talked about. That's just going to be part of calculating the taxes. Homeowner's insurance, how's that going to be reflected?
That's going to be for the buyer.
Another debit to the buyer. It's also going to show up down here for the escrow because we're going to need to know that homeowner insurance amount to calculate how much to reserve for escrow. And that'll be another debit to the buyer when we get down there. And so you could do it however you want. You can take them item by item, or you could just do this little first step. Interim interest, and really more, this is more about just our review time here, but interim interest is going to be what to who?
Is that going to be, they're going to have to split that, correct?
Well,
the buyer.
Let's think about what interim interest is, right? Here's our month of closing. Here's our closing day. And the first actual full payment to the buyer is not going to be all the way until a whole month, more than a month later, which covers the privilege of living there for that previous month. Therefore, this month is covered by that future full payment. We got to account for these remaining days in this month of closing. And so who is that benefiting? Being able to live there. You know, who cares about living there after closing day?
It's got to be the buyer.
Yeah.
So the buyer's got to.
Exactly. So it's a buyer only expense. It's just a buyer debit. They don't split it. It's not a proration because it's the interim time between closing day and the end of the month of closing.
Right.
And since it is the buyer's problem, so to speak, the day of closing is one of the days that you have to count that they're going to have to pay for.
Okay, so that is for the buyer and not the seller, unlike
exactly right.
the other. Okay.
So interim interest is that one rare unicorn where the buyer is responsible for the day of closing. All other cases, the seller pays it.
Okay.
Yep. And then deed recording. Who cares about the new deed?
It's going to be the buyer.
Yep. Another buyer debit. Sellers pay off overnight fee to mail that last payoff to somebody, to the lender.
That's the seller's
debit
responsibility.
Seller. Yep. Seller loan balance, that actual payoff amount.
It's going to be the debit to the seller.
For the existing seller's loan, exactly right. And then HOA is going to depend on whether it's been paid or not. So they usually they say $2,700 per year, but it's paid monthly. And if it's paid first, you know, you pay it before you live there or you use it. So if it's been paid already for the whole month, it sort of reminds me of one of the three versions of the tax situation. So how are we going to treat this money for HOA if it's already been paid?
Now, a question about HOA fees, something like that that's paid monthly. If people have not paid that with something like that, how would, because you can put a lien against a property. They can
Sure.
put a lien against you,
True.
correct,
Mhm.
for non-payment. But that should show up with a title search
Right.
if it's been recorded.
That too.
Okay.
Mhm. Exactly.
Could
So in this,
that hold up the sale of a property?
yeah, it could.
Delinquent HOA fee. Okay.
Mhm. Well, not hold it up, but it'll be one of the things that the seller's proceeds will have to be used to pay toward
Yeah.
and clear up.
Okay.
So I guess the next question is, what if the seller doesn't have enough proceeds to pay it? Well, that's a whole other issue. And has it been going on long enough that the HOA decided to start the foreclosure process? Because they could
Sure.
foreclose on the house with late enough payments of HOA. And so in this case, we have HOA for the month of closing right here. Here's the closing day. Seller has paid for the whole month. So if the seller has paid for the whole month and they're not going to be the owner for the whole month, we need to give them some money back. So we're going to end up crediting the seller and debiting the buyer for this amount of money.
Okay.
And we'll go back and figure that math out in a little bit.
Okay.
And then commission, where does that come from?
That's going to come from, well, it could come from either. It depends on the contract.
True.
But
But
typically
without
it comes-
overthinking. That's very, very true. You're going to be great.
From the,
Once we get you into the wild,
seller.
you're going to be great. But yeah, debit the seller for our purposes. And then excise tax, who pays that?
it's going to be the seller.
Another seller. And then, yeah, there you go. Now we kind of have a little reminder of what to do with all this stuff. So we've got buyer, we've got seller, debits, credits. So purchase price, is that going to be a nice line item for something, or do we need to do any calculation with purchase price?
I guess it's going to be the purchase price to the loan amount.
So just the purchase price itself, how's that going to count? How's that going to be for the
purchase
buyer?
price is going to go as a debit to the buyer,
Yeah. And
credit to the seller.
there you go. Yep. And then earnest money. Let's do earnest money. $6,000 of earnest money we figured out as a credit to the buyer.
Yes.
Nothing to the seller. And then the $35,000 of
Due diligence.
diligence is going to be credit to the buyer. Debit to the seller. And then you could do a couple things. We could either take care of the calculations as we get to the point in the problem, or we could do all the onesie twosies that we just know where to put it first and then come back through. I don't care, whatever is easier. I think maybe if we just take it as we get to it, we run less risk of missing something, skipping something.
Okay.
So loan to value. Now we need to figure out that loan amount. So 90% of 550.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be $495.
We'll make a note there that we need that. Origination fee, 1.5% origination fee. 1.5% of what?
Of the loan amount.
There you go. So that one's going to be 7,425, right?
Yes.
And that's a debit to the buyer. And then discount points.
And that's going to be 1% of the loan value times 3. So 3% of the loan.
Exactly.
Now, will they ask that how much will one
Not on this
discount
question.
point bring down?
Not on the monster question. They might on its own standalone question. But,
Okay.
But on
That
this,
is-
all they're looking for is how much do these cost?
Okay.
And really,
Now, will that vary bank to bank? Or is it just typically eighth of a
in real
percent?
life, those things do alter depending on a lot of different things. In fact, the 1/8 lowering is in real life like a quarter. It'll drop it by a quarter instead of an eighth. But again,
Okay.
we don't even touch this stuff in real life because we're gonna
Okay.
if they ask us,
That's for the bank, I would figure.
yeah, if the buyer says, well, how much are the discount points and how much will they lower my rate? I'm not answering that. I'm not going to say in pre-licensing I learned this. Here, let me show you. Overstepping, right? I would say let's talk to the lender because it does depend on other factors in the world, in the real world. But just so you know how it all works, the mechanics. That's why they have it in here, I guess. But 14,850 is a debit to the buyer. So we'll put that there. Discount points. Sometimes I'll make little lines here to keep on track since I'm right messy. And then tax value, we're probably going to need that in a minute. I guess we could use it now, really, because with the tax rate next, let's go ahead and figure the tax value. What is 85% of 550?
467,500.
There we go. There we go. And then if the tax rate is 9 mils, what's the annual taxes?
So times point. $4,207.50.
Perfect. Now, what are we going to do with taxes? We know that they're not yet paid. Oh, we figured that out already. We just need to figure out the seller's portion, and then we're going to subtract that from the total portion. So,
we got to figure out the date.
Yeah. How much are taxes per day? We know how much they are per year, so per day is going to be, let's just go with 360 for the
1169. Or do you carry that number out to get a more accurate?
We'll round on that one. So we got the rate. Now we need to know the days. So November 17th is 11/17. So that's 17 days plus 10 months at 30. So that's 300.
So that's 317 days to the seller.
To seller, exactly. And so we're going to multiply that 317 by the 1169. And I get 3705.73. How about you?
4207.5. How many days did we say? I just had it. I was too busy trying to figure out how many days the other 317. Yeah, I got the exact same thing.
Yep. And we don't need to worry about the buyer's number of days if we do it this way, because now that we know how much the seller dollars are, we can just subtract them. Yeah.
Okay.
From the 4207.50.
That makes sense because then I would have done it the long way.
Yeah. Oops. 4207.50 minus 3705.73. And so then the buyer's portion is 501.77.
Yes.
So we'll stick those over here. That's a seller debit of 3705. And a buyer debit of 501.77. All right, taxes done. Homeowners insurance. We're counting that whole first year's premium of $870 as a debit to the buyer. All right.
Now they're prepaying that, correct?
Yes.
For the first full year.
That's the standard practice. Yep.
Okay.
Interim interest. Here we go. So now we need to know the rate and the loan amount. And that's it. That's all we really need to know. And then calculate the days to the buyer. So the rate.
So we got 13 days, correct?
Let's see. let's do the rate part first.
Or wait, no, the interim, they actually have to have the day, so it's actually 14 days.
Right. Yeah. So the way we can do that is take the days in the month minus the day of closing. Was it the 17th?
Yes.
And what is that? 13?
13. And then
And
add
then
one.
add that day. So 14 days times something. Times we need to take that loan amount of
Right.
$495 and multiply it by what?
That loan factor
Not the factor.
or the interest.
Yeah, the interest rate. Factors only when we are specifically needing the P and I.
You know.
All we need now is just I.
Okay.
So we just need the annual interest paid on a loan amount of $495 so that we can take that down to the daily.
Yes.
And so $34,650 per year divided by the 360 is a daily of $96.25.
Yes.
And that's going to come down here and be multiplied by 14.
1,347.50. Yeah.
And that is a debit just to the buyer, which includes day of closing.
Okay.
Now, closing in. Let's see. Deed recording fee, $50, debit buyer. We know that already.
Mm-hmm.
And $75 for the seller's payoff. And payoff and seller loan balance. How much are they paying off? 167. Another debit seller. Am I going too fast? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
And then HOA fee. Let's do this HOA math. So we've got $2,700 per year, and it's paid monthly. Let's do a little thing down here. If the HOA is $2,700 per year, how much is it?
$225 a day. I mean a month.
Okay. 700 divided by that is 225. And how much is it per day?
It's going to be $7.50.
All right, we might need that. And so if we have this month and the 17th is the day of closing, how many days are the buyer's days?
It's a good question. Depends on who has the day of closing.
So
I would assume probably the buyer.
So the only case where the buyer is responsible for day of closing was something we just did, interim interest.
The interim interest.
So with HOA and everything else, seller pays day of closing. So it's just a straight 1713.
Okay. So 127.50 is the seller's responsibility.
So let's see. Yeah, 17 times the $7.50. Is that what you just did?
Yes.
But the thing is, the seller has paid for the whole month. So we need to give them back some money. We need to give them back. Yeah. We need the 13 days. Yeah.
$97.50.
What was that? How'd you get that one?
$750 times 13. Did I not do that right? I might have had something already in there.
Yeah, you got it right. I did it wrong.
Okay.
Good to have a buddy. So $97.50. There you go. So
I got ahead of myself too.
And that is we're giving seller back money, credit seller, debit buyer.
Yes, debit the buyer.
$97.50. The first proration that we actually have. Because we didn't need to handle the taxes with the proration this time. And then commissions, 6% of $550.
Going to be $33,000.
All right. That's a debit seller. And then excise tax on what? What do we calculate
be the
excise? Yeah,
Should be on the purchase price.
exactly. Divide by 500, a nice easy 1100.
Yes.
Another debit seller. And then escrow. We're going to need the number for months of taxes and months of insurance. So taxes per year were $4207.50, I think, right?
Yes. So you got $350.63 a month. And you just need 3 months. Is that what it said?
Yep.
So $1,051.88.
Sounds good. And then for insurance, what's the insurance premium? $870, or did I make that up? I did make it up
I can't
at
remember
some point.
if
Yeah,
it was.
$870.
Yeah, it's $870.
So that divided by 12
$72.50
times
a month. So $217.50. Oh, did I do that wrong?
Let's see. It was 870 divided by 12 is 72.50 per month times 5 months.
Oh, 5 months. Okay, that was my bad.
So we need to put these two things over here. We've got both of which are debits to buyer. So we've got 1,051.88 and a 362.50. And one is taxes escrow and the other is insurance escrow. And that's it. Now we just total everything up and then answer the questions. How much does the buyer need to bring? How much is the seller going to get? But we left one big number out. What do you think we've left out so far?
The loan amount?
Yep, exactly right. Good job.
So that's because it had, what was their, did they have they had the due diligence, they had the earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
What was their loan amount? I mean, I know the sale price was $550.
Mm-hmm.
The loan to value was 90%.
Yep.
So 90% of the $550.
There you go.
Okay, so their loan amount was the $495.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
Exactly. Yep. And so that is a what? How are we counting that?
That's going to be that's going to be their loan amount only has to deal with the buyer.
Yep.
That's going to be a debit to the buyer.
Are you sure? This is a confusing point.
It's going to be, I guess, a credit then to the buyer.
Let's reword the question. How does the loan amount need to be counted on the day of closing? In life, for the next 30 years, it absolutely is going to be a debit to the buyer as they make their payments and pay that thing down. But for closing, the lender is going to give them all that money. So they're going to
get a credit.
Most of which will be given to the seller as the purchase. And then the buyer's going to owe them. Yeah. Easy to miss. So the loan amount on the day of closing counts as a credit to the buyer.
Okay.
$495.
Because they're going to be coming to the table with that money.
Exactly. That's what makes this whole transaction possible, right?
Okay.
And from that $495, all of these, most of it's going again to the seller. So now we can total up these different columns, and I like to do it just that way. Some people are tempted to do this and say, well, let's say 550 and let's say add 6 and then let's take away this and let's do this. But you will never track down your mistake. If you realize, oh, I made a mistake, it's impossible. But if you just total up the 4 columns, it'll be much nicer to you later.
Okay.
So 550 plus the 74 25 plus the 14,850 plus 501.77 plus 870 plus 1347.50. Oops, darn it. 750 plus 50 plus 1051.88 plus 362.50. And I get
That added up really fast.
Yeah, for sure. 65. Then we're going to subtract from that the credits in a minute. We'll put that down right there. And those are 6,000.
That was debit the seller, correct?
Yeah, all that was all that was debit the buyer. Did I go too
Debit the
fast?
buyer. No, that's okay. I just couldn't see at the very top.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm just making my own little chart here.
Gotcha. So we got 6 plus 35 plus 97.50 plus the 495. And that's 536.
Okay.
097.50.
So it's just going to be the difference of the two.
Exactly right.
So 40,361.15.
Yep. There you go. That's what the buyer needs to
So
bring.
that's what they have to show up on closing day with, out of pocket.
Yep. Yep. Now let's see about the seller side. It will go faster because there's fewer line items. So the seller debit side is 35,000 plus 3705.73 plus 75 plus 167 plus 97.50 plus 33,000 plus 1,100. So that's 239,978.23. And then we're going to need the other one, which in this case
Is the sale price.
Yeah, don't have any other credits. The only place that the seller credit might be is, let me think here. Oh, we've got the HOA. Did we not put that in here somewhere?
I think the HOA is in there. I thought I saw it.
That should be
on
a
the
credit for the 97.50, but I think I might have written it in the wrong place.
Let's see.
Yeah, it's right
I was
here.
gonna say it's twice.
It's a credit to the, wait. Oh, shoot. See there? See what happens? Okay. We went to HOA. We said it's been paid, so we need to credit the seller and debit the buyer that amount. So there's that 97.50, but then I think I did the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, I credited the buyer. I should have put that over here as a debit.
Okay.
And I should have credited the seller. So these numbers that we just came up with here.
We just gotta adjust it by 97.50.
Yeah. Yeah. So that 4361 and 15 needs to be, they need to bring 97.50 more.
So 576, 556.15. And then you just 576, 556.15 minus 536.97.50. Because we got to adjust that credit as well, because it was on the wrong side.
Right.
Oh, that made it an even number.
plus 9750.
So the closing amount should be, I'll do that right. Yeah. 40,500. No. 40,556.15.
Let's see. Did you say 40,556.15?
Yeah. That's what I got.
That's what I get too.
So then it needs to go on the debit the seller's or the credit the seller side.
Yeah, credit the seller. Mm-hmm.
We got to subtract. So 2, 3, 9, 8, 8, 50. So we're going to add that to the $550,000 purchase price,
Right.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're getting credit for it. So the seller is walking away with $310,217,000 in profit.
I'm catching up. Is this what you got for the seller debits? 239,880.73.
I did.
Okay, good.
I think I got 50. But I mean that's pretty darn close, but
Yeah.
39. And I don't have my reading glasses on either, so 239. Oh, I think your number's right. I think I was off. So your number is correct with the 73.
Which gives us seller getting 310,216.75.
Yes.
Good. What a pain. Aren't you glad
That's
in
a
real
nice
life
little
we don't
chunk
have
of
to do
change
that?
to walk away with.
Yeah, I'll take it. That's okay. In real life, the paralegal's doing this with a spreadsheet, but we do have to have the expertise to verify the non-lender numbers. Anything that shows up on the contract, anything we negotiated with repairs, we need to double check that math. And it is surprisingly, just because they're using a spreadsheet, they could do it the wrong way. They could plug it in the wrong field and then throws it all off like I just did. Put the thing in the wrong field. We were almost there, and they could do that easily because they're just plugging and playing, right?
Yeah, well, we were all human.
Yeah. And in post licensing 302, sorry for the bad news, but you're going to do this again, but this time have to plug it into the actual closing disclosure, which I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense, but in real life, you don't have to do anything with the closing disclosure except double check the math. But
But your everyday buyer, they're expecting somebody to do this and not have to worry about it. So they're not really I wouldn't know how to check this before this class.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, I would just have went into it blind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I kind of felt like whenever we did that offer, we were definitely on a time crunch because they only gave us till 6 p.m. to put the offer in.
Wow.
Because the home had come back on the market. It had went off the market like immediately. It was a great house. And it came back on the market. The buyer got cold feet. And they only gave you, I think it was 2 days or a day and a half. No, it was 2 days to make an offer by 6 p.m. that night.
Gosh.
And there were so many offers on the table for it. Of course, it was a good investment property.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it, but we were on the time crunch because I wanted to talk to my bank first.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't want to go into it blind.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we didn't. I mean, we ended up getting it. I guess it was a blessing in disguise. But
How'd you find it or find out about it?
well, this is very interesting too. We've been looking on Zillow, and we have a camper we have down at the North Carolina coast, and we've had it for years. And that's where we want to retire. So we're like, well, let's go ahead and let's find a property, invest in it. We can rent it out until we're ready to move. And that's what we were going to do. And we were just looking at properties on Zillow, and all of a sudden we got a cold call text from somebody, a real estate agent, and she sent us the property. And we already had a real estate agent we were working with. It's a good friend of ours, and we were just going back and forth, like looking at properties. So we weren't going to use the agent per se that reached out to us, but they were the ones that sent the house to us.
Yeah.
Just randomly. We had seen it on Zillow, but she kind of just like threw it at us and was like, well, maybe. So yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Yep.
And I think they do purchase leads like that. Is that how?
Yeah.
From the clicks.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up making an offer on that house. I mean, I felt bad, but I mean, we're already working with someone.
Yeah, that's the risk.
But we had not signed an agreement with her. Right. But she is a friend, so we ended up signing a buyer's agreement, I'm sure, with that offer. But heck, I ain't gonna lie, we didn't really know what the heck we were signing. We were doing the electronic signing really fast just to get it out there.
That's the danger of electronic signing. It's tempting to not read it and just click. Yeah, but when we're in front of them face to face, then there's a little more pressure and expectation to say, here's what this means. And that's why I'm so much extra careful to explain it to them before I even send it for signing, because I want them to know before they succumb to the temptation just to click through everything and sign everything. I want them to understand what it is.
Right. Exactly. And we trust her. She was our friend, but it was, we came in $9,000 under what it sold for.
I was about to ask,
but that
if
was
you found out.
That was with a $20,000 offer over purchase price.
Yeah. I know. I had one time. I was a listing agent. I was the buyer agent. It was a past customer. They've used me about 13 times over the years, and they said, we want to buy a house, but if you can't help us buy this specific house, we're not going to do anything. But if you can, we're going to sell the house you sold us 5 years ago and buy this thing because it's next to our best friend. And so basically I had to commit to helping them with the full knowledge that it may very well just completely be a waste of time. If that one house that they try to buy doesn't go through, well, of course, multiple offers. And thank goodness the listing agent liked me and knew me from the past. And she said, I would really love to work with you compared to some of these other offer people that we've had. And so she told me as much as she was allowed to tell me. And and I had to give my people advice. And I said, look, I don't think what you've offered is going to be enough in terms of the deposit and the price. And they believed me. Thank goodness over the years, if they hadn't trusted me, we wouldn't have gotten it. And then all that time would have been wasted too. But they came to play and it worked. And they just barely got it by $1,000, I think.
Well, now I'm learning a lot with the due diligence. I mean, that offers can almost be the same, but that weighing factor is that due diligence and earnest money. And then we've also learned we were looking at land. Okay, let's just buy some land and sit on it. And how hard it is to get a land loan just so that you're not coming out of pocket with so much is really ridiculous.
Right.
And it depends on which lender and how if the land is raw or improved.
Right.
And each lender is different. It just really depends on how they see it. There may be electricity already ran to the neighborhood, but not necessarily to the property yet. So they consider it raw.
Well, it goes back
cleared?
to
Yes, it's
if
cleared.
they had to take it back from you and foreclose, what do they have? What kind of a sellable product do they have? And so if it's just raw land, they have a lot more at risk as opposed to a house. They can recover their costs with a house a lot quicker. So land is more down payment, higher interest rate, and that's just part of it. Yeah.
It is, and more out of pocket.
Yeah.
They'll only lend like 60%, 65% on raw land. So I'm just like, oh, okay. Do you do it? Yeah, I mean, you can do it, but you just got to sit on it for a while.
Yeah.
So
it's a higher percentage of the price, but it's a lower price than it would if it had a house on it. So Just the whole
Yes.
grand scheme.
And dealing with septic systems and septic permits.
Right.
And a lot of land that's been there for a while have expired septic permits.
Right.
And what it takes, you got to get another soil test to see if it still perks for that number of bedrooms. So we've definitely learned a lot going through, and our agents really been very helpful with explaining and pulling those permits and stuff like that, just to see from public record. Now, how accurate that stuff is, because it is 20 plus years old,
Right.
I have no clue, but I guess that gives you a stepping stone. Now, as an agent, like, she's able to pull those things from the records and pull the deeds, and
You are.
a lot of that stuff isn't accurate. Do you have to get all of that stuff renewed?
Not well. The deed is what it is. The septic permit, you're lucky. Some counties don't. Some depends on the age of the property. May be completely lost. Some like Stanley County only goes back 7 years, and so ultimately, if you can't produce a septic permit, and you need, as a broker, need to list the property, you need to disclose how much it perks for. And so your counseling to your seller would be, look, seller, we need to get a septic inspection out here to see what this current system can handle, so we can give them a perk number. Like, what is it? How many bedrooms? Is this a system that supports this house? So that's part of it. Yeah. And then if it's raw land, maybe a new perk test. Maybe soil engineers will perk and try several locations. The one from the county will only try one usually. So you pay extra for the soil engineer, but you get more for your money. You get more possibilities.
I gotcha.
Yeah, all that stuff is part of it as a broker.
Right. It was definitely interesting to see, once you have those tests done, you're only allowed to build on a certain part of your land.
Yeah. Well, that's where the septic tank will live. The house could be further away from it. Might involve a pump station, a grinder pump that pushes the stuff to the tank. Is it uphill from the house? Is it not? That's a concern and a question to ask too. So yeah, all of that. You're exactly right.
So it's just it's a lot to know.
What could appear to be an amazing lot, because of the location of where it has to perk, could really turn it into just not a great option at all. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And we had to weigh those too. It really changes what kind of house you want to build. If you wanted to have a garage in your backyard, you really can't build that.
Or a pool.
We were questioning that house that we put the offer on. We did put in our contract, they had made an addition to the house, but through the county, it didn't show that it passed
permitted
the CO. So we asked for that. And that probably is one reason we didn't get it too. I mean, even if we'd have been neck and neck as we were wanting.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to buy something that the foundation's going to crumble. So, and then we felt like the shed was really close to that septic field. So just little stuff like that. I mean, I guess it was a blessing, but just to know. And I mean, we would, of course, had it surveyed, and it would have came out just perfectly fine. But just on paper, it looked like
you would have invested a lot of money by that point. Then you would have found out the bad news. These country properties, the great part is you can do what you want to do within reason, but sometimes they do more than they should have done. And then you buy this money pit. And then you got to move that shed. Then you got to add a leach field to the septic system, the layout. And now you're thousands of dollars in the hole. So you did the right thing. All those questions don't need to be questions.
I feel down there, things move a little slower.
Yeah. Where was it?
Definitely more countryside down there, where here in the Research Triangle, everything moves fast. Houses sell fast. Everything moves fast.
Well, fewer questions.
So, and that's another draw.
Yeah. Yeah. All those.
I like the slower paced, but I do feel like when we were on like a 3-week limit for that due diligence period, I felt like that was going to be a crunch down there. Felt like that was going to be a little bit harder to accomplish.
Yeah, it's moving as slow as it's moving. Yeah, good point.
But I think that's really it that I have for questions. It was mostly math. That's where I feel the most uncomfortable.
Okay.
I think my only other area I don't feel as comfortable with is property management. And doing those numbers with the NOI
Oh, right. Yep.
And the cash flow, I don't feel as comfortable with that.
Okay. Let's take a look.
And I mean, unless you're in that field, will you ever even deal with anything like
No.
that?
Residential, no. But if you start working with an investor, they might start asking you questions like that
Right.
for investment property. And it's, I think once you look at it from a practical perspective, like if you had, instead of shopping for land, which you all experienced a while back, if you had shopped for a rental property and
Right.
thought, okay, let me see these, what do I need to know? Well, I need to know how much it's going to cost me to operate this property because it's a business,
Right.
right? And it's going to cost utilities and taxes and insurance and looked up all that stuff. I think you would have figured all this stuff out anyway. You'd have come up with your own given equation because by necessity, right? You'd have been like,
Correct.
oh, okay. So let's see. There we go. Let's do this one. So this is it's one of the things I just sent you. So they won't, from the syllabus, it says they won't do a calculation. Let's double check. Question on cash flow. Let me double it. Check it here. Here we go. Estimating value using the direct capitalization formula. Determine a single estimate of value of at least one property by the direct capitalization approach. That's the given formula. Provide the cap rate. These are instructions to me about what to give to you. So this tells us what you're going to need to face on the exam. There will be no calculations using the gross rent multiplier. So you need to know what that is, but you don't have to calculate it. But on this one, it's basically the question gives you the NOI, the information you need to come up with NOI, which is gross income, vacancy rate, operating expenses. And then you get down to the NOI, and we'll do this in a minute. And then it will also give you the cap rate. And so once you have NOI and cap rate, what can you determine with that?
Your cash flow.
Nope. We're going that horizontal level, NOI. And I'm asking you, a visual person, to answer a question with words. Okay. So I'm sorry.
All right. No, that's okay.
I appreciate the and acknowledge that I'm asking you for something that's not reasonable. So
no, that's okay.
The GI, the gross income,
okay,
minus the vacancy rate, right, minus the operating expenses, gives us that NOI number, net operating income. If we keep going vertical down, then we subtract out the debt service, which is the loan payment, right?
And I think I just need to go through and read this chapter, like from beginning to end, because there's a lot in here.
It is. And that gets us to cash flow. So the difference between NOI and cash flow is debt service.
Debt service, right.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember that.
And so what if you owned it cash outright? You didn't have a loan. Well, then in your case, the NOI would be the same as the cash flow. Because you don't have anything to subtract from it. Mm-hmm. So now the question that syllabus just asked was more, forget this part. It was, what do we do with the NOI? Now that we have NOI, what's the T formula look like? So NOI divided by this cap rate gives us the market value. Okay. That's why it's so important. Because if we figure out the NOI, have a cap rate estimate, then we can figure out approximately what this property is worth.
Okay.
And that's what they'll test you on. Using this to get down to NOI, cap rate is given 6, 7, 8, 9%, something like that. Now you can do this math to say how much is this building worth. Yeah. So let's look at this one. We've got multifamily property net operating income of $410,000. I'm going to keep track of this on my iPad, and I'll flip
Okay.
over in a minute. So we got 410 is the NOI. Oh, I didn't even make you do gross income minus vacancy minus operating expense. I just
Yeah.
gave you the NOI here.
We went right to it.
Yeah.
So that would be 410 times the 5% to get your market value.
What happens when you get that? When you do
And
that?
then you get that huge, I got 20 million, 2,050,000, but that's different than what you got.
Yeah.
Did I do it wrong?
410.
410,000 times 5%. I don't think my mathin' is mathin'.
Did you get 20,500?
I did.
And that doesn't make sense that the market value would be that, does it? It almost seems like it's the opposite of what you should be getting. And so
Right.
if it's the opposite, let's try 410 divided by 5% instead of times 5%.
There we go.
Hey.
And I got that big number.
And I apologize
Well, that
for being
would
a
make
jerk.
sense if I would have looked on the screen. It told me.
Well,
to
I wanted
divide.
to make you work for it because that can really lock it in your brain, right? You're like, of course, wait,
Okay.
that doesn't work. And you'll probably never forget that it's this. It's
Right.
the NOI divide by cap rate to get the market value. Because we get...
Gotcha. If they're
14,
side by side, then you multiply. I
Yeah.
gotcha.
8,200,000 is the value.
And that is what would stump me because they would probably have exactly what I had as an answer.
Oh yeah, because they know that's maybe a mistake somebody might make. But it goes. How do you feel about these T formulas? Is that something useful to you? You like to do it that way?
Yes. So
good.
I listened to a few different other YouTubes other than this one that has helped with some of the math as well, and they all use that T.
Good. Who is it?
Like
Travis?
I try to listen to one that goes over a lot of the vocabulary to kind of stick it in my brain.
Nice.
And they had a math one that uses the T as well.
There you go. So do you have a sheet of T formulas? Have you written them all out that you can possibly use?
I have not.
That might be a
But
practice.
I've heard that that's the best thing to do is to go as soon as you get to your test,
Well, yeah.
just write all your formulas out.
Yeah. I would do that this weekend too, just to kind of think, what can my brain dump onto the page, T formulas, and then go back and look through and think, oh yeah, I missed this one over here about this. Because you'll see the trend. And what are they? It's annual taxes, it's annual insurance, it's NOI. Anything, any three-part algebra equation can be made into a T formula, but it's and tax.
As long as you got two numbers, you
Yeah.
can do it.
Annual interest, both of which always involves a rate down there, and a bigger number on the other side. Tax, of course, is the tax rate times the tax value or assessed value. Rate. This is the loan amount. Then we've got the NOI, which is the cap rate times the market value. Then we've got let's see, what else? Oh, that was taxes. Well, I guess you could do one for acreage. So we've got our 43,560 down here, and then number of acres over here on the bottom, and then the actual amount of square feet of the lot up here. So I might go through and just kind of identify those, and maybe you'll have a page of 8 or 10 of them. And then if you do want to do this, as soon as you sit down for the test on your scratch paper, oh, did I get all 8 of them? Did I get all 10 of them? However many there are that you like to use.
Right.
If
That's a lot of work for 7 questions.
it really is. But if you're all done, then it's worth trying to get a couple more points. Why not?
Right.
If you've done everything else there is to do and you have time left.
And they have it in the relic where each of the breakdown for the test, how many questions is in each, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to look at that. And I did get my background check
Oh, good.
completed. I just hold on to that.
Yeah, the commission
until-
got it too. when you got it, they got it, and they are just going to hold on to it and ignore it until they get a word that you passed the Pearson exam. And the point at which they get that notification, now they'll look at your background check, think about your character study, and decide, okay, yeah, everything looks good. Then they'll issue you the license.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Now, whenever you say you just want to sit on the license, because my main goal is, I mean, I have a full-time job now, is when my husband does retire in a few years, is if we do move, to be able to, that's when I pick it up, that I'm able to pick up some real estate, do it part-time at the coast or in that vicinity. I can sit on it without being active, correct?
Right. But
and just go ahead and do my continued education or my 3 classes.
right. The CE doesn't start until you activate or affiliate, but the post starts immediately. You've got 18 months to get those posts. You could just be knocking those out in the meantime and remain inactive and knock out those posts.
Right.
At any school.
And then I still have to stay active, though. I still have to pay my fees yearly.
You do have to renew. If you don't renew the license for 2 years or more, then you are back here with me. Well, probably not, because I'm not going to be teaching pre for a while. But you're back all the way back to pre-licensing.
Now, I might dabble in it a little bit. I mean, I'm definitely interested in it for sure. Yeah, well, it's just it's very the market is very, very full here.
Well, this year might see a little change there. For one thing, is 86,000 active human licenses, but a lot of them aren't doing anything. And there's still room, and it's really more about your personality and how much somebody likes you compared to me or those other 5 people. And so I would put my money on you just as much as anybody else, because it's really going to be like the click, the personality. So here's what that looks like. When you pass everything, you will be an inactive.
I like the way you think when I pass.
Well, my money is definitely on you compared to others that I've instructed not necessarily right now, but out there in the world. You'll be an inactive provisional broker. So you've got to do the 3 posts, 18 months. You got to pay the $45 per year. Let's go ahead and get you affiliated. Now you will become an active provisional broker. It depends on who you affiliate with as to what your next steps are. They might be fine with you basically just parking your license with them. But how's this going to change? You're still going to need to do 3 posts if you haven't already by that point. Still going to pay $45 a year. But now you're going to have to do CE. But that doesn't kick in until the 2nd June 10th. Right? So it depends on when you go active. All this works great. What is it? June. I don't see you getting the license till the next license year anyway, because that's July 1st, right around the corner.
Right.
And so that means if July or August you make all this happen, the first June 10th you get to skip is June 10th of 2025. And so you don't need to do any CE until June 10th of 2026, almost 2 years later, which is still inconsequential because it's only like $100 total for the 2. No big deal.
Right.
It's not enough reason to justify not getting into it. If you're that tight on money by $100, you probably need to take a little more time to get ready anyway, in general, as a person. But what else here? Your active PB, now it's just going to depend on the company you're with. They might request a certain number, but that you could just park it and then get referral fees. And then some companies give you the signs to use and give you the lock boxes. And the only thing, what you will need to do, unless you're just going to get referrals, is possibly the MLS subscription, the Super Lockbox app. Realtor, but that may change. I'm not sure what the final decision is there as to the current lawsuit settlement. If they're going to relax the requirement, because a lot of MLSs are tied to the realtor membership. You have to be a realtor to have access. So that might go away.
Don't they own
I'm not sure. Huh? What?
Doesn't that organization own the MLS?
It's a very strong affiliation. But that was part of the complaint of the suit. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean. It's smart to just have both, because one thing about being a realtor is the NCAR, being a part of the North Carolina Association, which gives you the forms, and now you don't have to find forms to use. So anyway, that's just sort of let's just keep that going. This means approximately 200 a quarter. I think it's like, I don't remember, but maybe 50 a quarter for that. And then realtor is at this point like 700 per year. So what else? Oh, errors and emissions insurance depends on the firm and how many people are sharing in the policy, but it might only be like $50 a month. And then it's just down to, as long as you can just handle these things, which you might kind of like and justify, because you'll think, well, I can use the MLS access to get up to speed on the values, right?
Right.
The realtor part, a lot of people I think are going to dump this year because they're going to get out of the business basically, and they're looking for ways to cut costs because they're not really selling enough to justify it. But that's it. Besides this, it's just going to depend on the company itself and how much it costs to be with that company. Sometimes the company will give you a high split, but charge you a high desk fee. So when you do make money, they'll give you 80, 90, 100% split, but you got to pay $500, $1,000, $1,500 a month just to walk through the door, like a Remax kind of a place. Yeah. But more and more companies are much more conducive to a lower producing agent or a newer agent because they want to build up the number of people.
Now, do you feel like more firms will pop up? People that have been in the industry for a while to branch off and create their own firms so that they are
already
listing agent.
That's already happening because just yesterday I taught a Bickup and the day before, and both of them, as always, vast majority, 60 to 80 people in the class, probably 90% of them are little one-person firms like me. And so we're now at 18,000 firm licenses. So I don't know. It depends on if people who do stick it out in this business feel like they'll be more comfortable at a bigger firm that can guide them through these uncertain times, or if they want to cut their costs and it's worth it just to kind of try to wing it, but not have that split to deal with. Because when I changed from the last firm I was with, I was at 80-20 with him, which is a really good split. He didn't give anything for that. No leads. And sometimes he would tell me, because he and I were more kind of friendly, and he would talk about occasionally some new agent he picked up would be complaining because they didn't provide leads. You don't get leads at an 80-20 split. You might get leads at a 50 or a 60 one, but not 80-20. And so that's it. What do you want, splits or leads? Which is also the reason that a team might be a starting point for some people, because then they hand you the leads, but it's not your name on the production. You know, you're a hired gun. They're just handing you the lead. You work the buyer, get them under contract, then hand the file off to the transaction coordinator, go out with another buyer. You're also probably not as in charge of your schedule. You're just having to crank out, and they expect a certain level of production. But you'll probably hit 6 figures in your first year because you don't have to do lead gen. That's really the big differentiator between success and failure in your first couple years is lead generation.
Right.
Figuring that.
And how do you even start with a firm? I mean, like that, I think is probably the most intimidating.
What do you mean?
Is just picking a firm to affiliate with.
Well,
and do you just walk through the door?